We are going to be looking at some creepy videos, strange and odd news stories, and as always, let's go ahead and get right into today's video. So in this video, we're going to go ahead and look at some pretty creepy coincidences, some you may not have heard of before. Now, one of these videos I did go ahead and create for Minutes of Horror, but I set it to private because I felt like it didn't really mix with the channel at that time. But now that I have this channel, I'm going to go ahead and play it on this channel. So the video I'm going to go ahead and show is about a year old. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at this very creepy coincidence. This happened on 9/11, right before news had broken out about what had taken place.
Get ready to read all these words on this page without making a mistake. Look at the letter at the end and remember the sound it makes. Get ready. Kite. Yes, kite. Get ready to read this word the fast way. Get ready. Kid. Yes, kid. Sound it out. Get ready. Kid. Sound it out. Get ready. Kid. What word? Kid. Yes, kid. Boys and girls, sound this word out. Get ready. Steel. What word? Steel. Yes, steel. Read these words the fast way. Get ready. Playing. Yes, playing. Get ready. Must. Yes, must. Let's read these words the fast way without making a mistake. Get ready. Kite. Yes, kite. Get ready. Kit. Yes, kit. Get ready. Steel. Yes, steel. Get ready. Playing. Yes, playing. Get ready. Must. Yes, must. Boys and girls, pick your reader up from under your seat. Open your book up to lesson 60 on page 153.
Now, while these kids are indeed saying words like kick instead of hit, and playing instead of playing, and steal like you're stealing something instead of a steel building, the phonics make it sound like something different. The phonics make it sound like kite, hit, steal, plane, must, and if you play around with those words, you get kite, plane, must, hit, steal. These kids were chanting this, and then not too long after, this is when Bush would get the news about what had taken place in New York. So was this just a strange coincidence or some kind of ritual? This next creepy coincidence comes from Jason K. Pargan.
This is the weirdest and creepiest coincidence I have ever heard of in my entire life. I have been obsessed with this story for years, and as far as I can tell, I am the only one. Now, when I start to tell the story partway through, you're going to say, yeah, that's pretty weird, but there's a twist coming and it's going to blow your mind. The first thing you need to know is that this is not an urban legend. It's not rumor. My sources are UPI, the wire service, and it starts with this headline from March 7th, 1989, Inmate Electrocuted on Toilet. Now, some of you out there have actually already heard of this part because it's a pretty famous story. In 1981, a man by the name of Michael A. Godwin was convicted of assaulting and taking the life of a woman. He was sentenced to the electric chair, but on retrial, that sentence was reduced to life in prison to be served in South Carolina. Several years later, in 1989, he was found dead in his cell, sitting naked on his metal toilet. He had a pair of headphone wires coming out of his mouth, and prison officials said that he was trying to repair the headphones that he was using to listen to his television. He bit down on the wires and electrocuted himself. And that story became famous because everybody was like, it's karma. He was sentenced to the electric chair. He avoided that, but then wound up getting electrocuted on a chair in his cell. But that is not the weird, creepy coincidence that I'm here to talk about. Here's another UPI headline. Pennsylvania inmate dies in freak accident. So we have a completely different person in a completely different prison in a completely different state 8 years later. This guy was named Lawrence Baker. He was also convicted of murder. He was also sentenced to the electric chair. He also had his sentence reduced to prison time, and then he also was found dead on his metal toilet, having been electrocuted by headphone wires. This story, just like the first one, became very famous. If you look up any book or article on weird deaths or ironic deaths, this one will be on there. I've read articles that have both of these cases on there, and then with the second one, they just say, can you believe this happened a second time? No, I can't. Now, I know what you're going to say. Millions of people have served prison time in the United States. Thousands of people pass away while incarcerated. So surely in that entire universe of people, this kind of thing has happened a lot. They probably are given very shoddy televisions that probably electrocute people all the time. Only, no, I can't find a third example of this happening anywhere on planet Earth, in or out of prison. I can't find any evidence that it's even possible to die this way. There's not very much electricity running through headphone wires. Of course there's not. Some of you watching this have bitten through headphone wires and you're still alive. If you Google it, you will find exactly one article linking the two incidents on crack.com, and I was the editor. But do you understand what I'm saying here? That it appears that only two people in the history of the world have ever accidentally electrocuted themselves while sitting on a metal toilet, and that both of them, by sheer coincidence, got sentenced to the electric chair and then escaped it during a retrial. And if you're asking me, well, what are you implying actually happened, Jason? I don't know. You tell me.
The hurricane that would change the course of history. Having been born and raised in New Jersey for over 20 years, I am no stranger to powerful hurricanes. Hurricanes so massive, they can also be felt in New York. A hurricane striking New York could also be felt in New Jersey. Makes a lot of sense given the fact how close the two states are together. Over 20 years ago, both New Jersey and New York were bracing for a very powerful hurricane. Some reports have the hurricane as either being a Category 3 or an extreme Category 4, that hurricane being Erin. Make no mistake about it, Hurricane Erin was indeed targeting both New Jersey and New York, with New York taking the brunt of the damages. The cost of the damages were being calculated, and it was estimated to be in the millions of dollars. Hospitals were bracing for thousands of injured, not only injured but also deceased. This hurricane was supposed to be a historic day for New York.
Of cloud cover accompanied by scattered showers. I remember that day very well. I was here at News 12 doing my evening weathercast and showing our viewers satellite images of a very powerful storm, a Category 3 hurricane, Hurricane Erin, which was moving on a track that would take it perhaps the next day, right into the tri-state metropolitan area. Notice also the movement. It's moving toward the northwest, and if it were to keep on moving, it would be heading right toward Long Island and southern New England, but it's not going to do that. But then I pointed out that the cold front that was moving through our area would ultimately push Erin away from the east coast. Will be turned around and moved to the north and northeast, out of the picture for us as this cold front comes on in and through, and from all intents and purposes, just boom, kicks Erin right on out to sea. I was actually happy to tell our viewers that we were going to dodge a major weather bullet, that the hurricane was going to veer away from the eastern seaboard, that September 11th was going to be a beautiful day, blue skies and bright sunshine. In retrospect, maybe it would have been better if we had to deal with the hurricane.
Hurricane Erin was supposed to reach New York and make landfall on 9/11. Had it reached New York, visibility would have almost been zero. There would have been no way anybody could fly a plane in this hurricane. Yet, at very last minute, a cold front came along out of nowhere and brushed Hurricane Erin out to sea, making for bright, beautiful, clear skies for 9/11.
Front moves through, less humid air moves in, and sunshine. You know, if that cold front had been just 24 to 36 hours slower than it was, the weather on 9/11 might have been much different than it turned out to be.
There's no doubt if a hurricane had hit on 9/11, the situation would have been changed.
Bill Corbell is a broadcast meteorologist who began his career as a weather officer in the Air Force and recently retired as a lieutenant colonel. The highlight of his military career was a 2-year stint as a weather forecaster for Air Force One. Corbell, who is a private pilot, believes that if Hurricane Erin had moved into the Northeast on September 11th, it likely would have canceled numerous flights and prevented the terrorists from carrying out their plans.
The hijackers, the terrorists needed certain conditions to fulfill what they wanted to do, and the weather just would not have allowed that if a hurricane had hit New York on that day.
Ironically, the beautifully pristine weather that arrived on the morning of September 11th actually helped the terrorists.
I mean, they needed really good weather, which they got. That cold front just scoured the atmosphere clean. It was as clear as you recall and as blue as we have ever seen around here. So that allowed these modestly competent pilot terrorists to see the targets and do what they had to do.
If it had not been September 11th, it might have been some other date then that the terrorists would have chosen. But one thing that we are certain of, if Hurricane Aaron had continued on its northwesterly course into the northeastern states and the tri-state metropolitan area, the tragic events that have been burned into our collective memories and associated with the date, September 11th, might never have happened.
The commercial that had explained everything. In the early hours of August 13th, 2018 in Frederick, Colorado, American oil field operator Christopher Lee Watts ended the life of not only his pregnant wife Shanann, but also their two children, Bella and Celeste. Prior to his interrogation and ultimately his arrest, Christopher Watts rushed home not only to be greeted by a neighbor, but also the police. What Chris Watts did not know is that his neighbor had a video camera that monitored the neighborhood, which includes the Watts home. Upon seeing this video footage, Chris became very agitated. He began fidgeting, moving around, sweating. He was not acting his normal self according to the same neighbor. But even though he was acting very suspicious, nobody knew that Chris was actually the suspect. He was still holding on to his lies. But pay close attention to what plays on the TV, the commercial that appears directly after the neighbor stops playing the video footage.
Diesel. Yeah, I thought nothing.
Nothing for the rest of the day.
No, that's it.
She's pregnant as well.
How far along?
15 weeks.
Did you happen to catch that? Chris stops and stares at the TV that shows a baby in its mother's womb that reminds him that his wife was pregnant. But as he begins to turn around, you can see the commercial play out. In the commercial, you can see a person buried in an oil field. The oil starts to slowly engulf this person where the only thing that's left is their skull. Two hands come out of the ground and reach for the skull. Then the TV quickly shifts right back to the outside camera. So then what is the significance behind this very bizarre commercial that to this day I still cannot find any information on? I would like to clarify that I found more information about this commercial after I made this video. This is a quick edit so I can say that this commercial belongs to the TV series American Horror Story. This was a hourglass teaser for its season 8 Apocalypse. And I have to say the song in the commercial is just as eerie as the visuals itself as it relates to the Chris Watts case. Now, I can't play the song due to copyright strikes, but I will leave a link to the commercial in the comment section below. Just 2 days later, on August 16, 2018, Shanann Watts and her two daughters would be found at an oil field where Chris Watts worked. Shanann buried in a shallow grave while both of their daughters were placed inside of crude oil tanks. A body shown on TV being buried in an oil field while at the same time hands are coming out of crude oil to grab onto a skull, a commercial that playing at the exact same time when Chris realizes his cover is blown thanks to this neighbor's video camera. This is just so strange. This is such a coincidence that I don't even think I can call this a coincidence. Let's just call this for what it is. It looked like at that moment someone or something was trying to speak out. That just happens to be so astronomically rare. Now, on November 19th, 2018, Chris Watts pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He is currently serving 5 life sentences. Watts is currently being held in a Wisconsin prison. Seemingly, after the crime had taken place, there had been a lot of paranormal events taking place inside the Watts home. A lot of these events, voices, and things being seen were captured by the police themselves investigating the home. For example, you can hear 2 investigators become very confused when they hear a little girl giggle.
Well, there's plenty of first end of the field.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What in the world was that? Wow. Go in there and step on that little blue thing and see if that's where that noise came.
Yeah, it sounded like a kid toy.
It sort of sounds like it.
something. I heard it.
Did you hear it?
I did.
Sounded like a kid giggling or something, didn't it? Or a kid.
It did.
Where did that come from? Because all he did was go straight in there. That was strange, but we'll make a note of that.
I heard it. I definitely heard the same thing you did.
Yeah, and then he just sort of turned around and looked. But I didn't. It took me just a second to register. Was she on anything? Oh no, she was pregnant.
A book about the Maui fires prior to the Maui fires. On August 8th, 2023, massive fires had overtaken Lahaina, Maui. Now, the official narrative as to what happened in Lahaina, Maui happens to be that high winds and dry weather caused the wildfires to develop. Basically, climate change. I just happen to be very hard pressed to find anybody that believes the official narrative. If they do, I am sure they are few and far between. There has been many suspicious things to have come out, many suspicious things that have come to light ever since those fires. Well, for one, there is the Healy My 2040 Long Range Transportation Plan, which is basically an instruction manual to turn Maui into a smart city. Then we have on camera police blocking exits, blocking people from trying to escape, turning them right back around into the fires.
Video shot by Travis Miller shortly after he goes in and out of Safeway at 3 p.m. show northbound lanes then shut down. This video shows no cars on the blocked off highway still 5:24 p.m. 2.5 hours later when Debbie Schultz Peterson shot this video. Miller's video documented the lane closure during that time. He says police directed traffic down Keawe Street into the cannery.
And either went out the backside on the front street. I could see that everyone was blocked, so I went out and I came this way and I got under the power line.
Though we are not crossing the barricade, we're told we cannot film here.
You go somewhere else, but you guys not allowed here.
Waters have been shut off, stopping people from combating the fires. All 80 sirens were not working. Then there is the subject of possibly over 1,000 children still missing since the day of the fires. So basically, we can go on and on and on when it comes to all the suspicious events that circled around the Maui fires. But I want to look at a very suspicious book that was published on Amazon only 2 days after the fires had taken place. A book written by an author named Milestone, or Milestones, titled Fire and Fury, the story of the 2023 Maui fire and its implications for climate change. A brief description of the book reads, Fire and Fury, the story of the Maui fire and its implications for climate change is a gripping and eye-opening account of one of the most devastating wildfires in Hawaii's history, and how it reveals the urgent need to address the global climate crisis. The book chronicles the events of August 8th through August 11th, 2023, when a massive fire swept across the island of Maui, fueled by drought, heat, and hurricane winds. The book describes the harrowing experiences of the people who lived through the fire, as well as the heroic efforts of the firefighters and rescuers who battled the flames. Now, as you can see, this book is pushing the climate change narrative, but that's not the biggest problem here. The biggest problem is that this book was published by Amazon on August 10th, 2023. This book had been published by Amazon only 2 days after the fires had taken place. Matter of fact, while this book was available for purchase, the fires were still raging on. This book also recounts the events of August 11th, a date that had not happened yet as this book was being published. For most people, this book was enough proof that the fires that had taken place in Lahaina, Maui were indeed intentional. People all over social media were talking about this book, so eventually the fact checkers, they had to be called in. PolitiFact, they run an article titled, A Book Published August 10th About the Maui Wildfires is proof the wildfires were planned. This would be PolitiFact's statement about the book.
Social media users are basically claiming that a book about the Maui wildfires that was published only 2 days after the fire started is proof that the fires were planned.
They came out with a book, Fire and Fury, the story of the 2023 Maui fire. It was 100% a plan. They wanted the land in Maui, and now they got it.
The timing of the book's publication is not proof that the fires were planned. The book's online summary and introduction appear to be drawn from publicly available information reported by news outlets in Maui County. The author's name appears to be a pseudonym, Dr. Milestones, and the Amazon author bio reads, "I'd rather not say." About 15 other books under the same pseudonym were published within a 3-month period. This has led to speculation that the book might have been produced using artificial intelligence, which draws from information already available online. The Maui book is not on Amazon anymore. We rate this claim false.
PolitiFact had determined that this was simply AI pulling from different algorithms from different media sources, putting together a digital book and sending this digital book over to Amazon. But there was only 2 problems with this theory. Well, for one, the most important part that PolitiFact happens to leave out happens to be the fact that this was not a digital book. This was a paperback book. It takes Amazon anywhere from 3 business days to 10 business days to publish a paperback book. So they want us to believe that this paperback book was created, sent off to Amazon, and published within the span of 2 days. There is also the simple fact that at that time, the most popular AI program was ChatGPT. ChatGPT, when you would put in the Maui fires 2023, as the Maui fires were raging on, ChatGPT could not recognize the Maui fires because at that time, ChatGPT was not powerful enough to recognize current events. The excuse that AI had created this book just does not seem plausible. So then, what's going on here? Was the timing that this book was published just a mere coincidence? This book was published as fast as possible by Amazon? Or is this proof that something sinister did indeed take place with Maui, and they were trying to push out this climate change narrative as fast as they could? The strange Chinese text messages. In the early morning hours of February 22nd, 2024, those who had AT&T as their phone carrier, among others, were unfortunately greeted with an outage. Many people across the United States had lost all voice and mobile data service, with some of those impacted unable to reach 911 emergency services. But it just wasn't AT&T. Verizon and T-Mobile users were also affected. Businesses outside of phone carriers were also affected, so were pharmacies. There were many theories as to what had happened, anywhere from a cyber attack, the solar flares, right down to AT&T saying that it was an employee error. Now, those who had AT&T and other phone carriers that were affected had no service whatsoever, but there was a small minority of people that were receiving bizarre and strange text messages. These text messages were in a different language, which was eventually determined to be Chinese. There were people in the comment section of my videos telling me they were receiving these text messages. There were people on Reddit saying they were receiving these bizarre text messages. So people took what was in these text messages and ran them through AI translating software. Multiple different types of translating software, they were getting different results. But there was a commonality. There was one word that always stood out, and that one word happened to be bridge. For instance, there was one translation that read, "Consider the bridge's magnetism ground, and you will be alone in the bridge," calling for an alliance, weeping, knocking on the wall, looking forward to expanding, knocking on the dust, Zyojin bastard. Another had read, "The bridge is made of magnetic material and the bridge is made of wood." Google had translated the text message as, "Consider the bridge. Cheshi wins the prisoner and sends the prisoner via iron oxygen canal." But Apple would have the eeriest translation of all. "Don't worry about the bridge," repeatedly saying, criticize the bridge, and then over and over again saying, "The bridge, the bridge, the bridge." So again, no matter how it was translated, there was a clear focus on a bridge. Now, as time had progressed, there have been multiple incidences involving bridges in the United States. Many people had taken these text messages as some kind of warning or some kind of prophetic message. What many people may not know is that as these people were receiving these strange and bizarre text messages on February 22nd, that same day, only hours later, there was a major bridge collapse in China. On February 22nd, 5 people had lost their lives after a barge hits bridge near China's Guangzhou, plunging vehicles in the water. This barge striking this bridge would actually be the first in a series of strange events where barges were striking bridges. A month later, a barge would strike the Francis Scott Key Bridge, bringing the entire bridge down. Images on state-owned China Central Television showed an empty container barge lodged between 2 columns of the bridge, with part of the bridge's 2-lane road deck missing. All road traffic on the bridge was halted. 4 vehicles and an electric motorbike fell off the bridge. 2 vehicles, which included a bus, plunged into the water, and 3 other vehicles ended up on the barge. CCTV said the bus was only carrying its driver. China does not know what caused this barge to strike this bridge, but like I said, this would be eerily similar to the events that had taken place across the United States. Were these text messages just a mere coincidence, or was this some kind of warning, or perhaps something else? The strange premonition. In a bedroom in a townhouse near Amsterdam, Miguel Panduinata reached out for his mother saying, "Mama, may I hug you?" His mother, Samira, wrapped her arms around her 11-year-old son, who had been oddly agitated for days, peppering her with questions about death, about his soul, about God. For days, Miguel was not acting like his normal, cheerful self. His mother, Samira, had no idea why. He had a big trip coming up to visit his grandmother, so he should be very excited. The next morning, she would drop Miguel and his big brother Shaka at the airport so they could catch their flight and start their journey to Bali to visit their grandmother. Miguel's silver suitcase sat in the living room ready to go. Jet skiing and surfing in paradise awaited. But still, something was very off. A day earlier, while playing soccer, Miguel had burst out, "How would you choose to die? What would happen to my body if I was buried? Would I not feel anything because our souls go back to God?" The night before Miguel's big trip, Miguel refused to release his mother from his grasp. The very next day, Samira had taken her boys to the airport, and finally they were outside customs. The boys, Shaka and Miguel, hugged Samira goodbye and walked toward passport control. This is when suddenly Miguel whirled around and ran back, throwing his arms around his mother. Miguel saying to his mother, "Mama, I'm gonna miss you. What will happen if the airplane crashes?" Now, Miguel has flown before, so Samira was wondering what this was all about. So she says to Miguel, "Don't say that," while squeezing him. "Everything will be okay."
I mean, the eerie thing was that right before getting on the flight, after going through passport control, he ran back to his mom, my sister, who was standing next to me, and he said, what's going to happen if the plane is going to crash and I'm going to die? I'm afraid to fly. And she said, "Don't worry, you've flown so many times before on your own. You've been an unaccompanied minor on many flights before. You'll be safe. Your big brother is there. Everything's going to be fine." And he said, what's going to happen if I die? And what if God asked me a question? What should I tell him? And so
Samira reassured her sons that everything was going to be okay. As they walked off, Samira noticed that Miguel kept looking back at her. She noticed that he had a very sad look in his eyes, but eventually he would vanish from view. Samira started to feel strange. She started to feel nervous, but she eventually reassured herself that everything was going to be okay. And for Shaka and Miguel and 296 other passengers, everything was okay. Everything had been okay for 2 hours of their 12-hour flight. You see, the flight that the boys boarded and the flight that these passengers were on just happened to be MH17. Samira just finished buying clothes for Shaka when her phone rang. She picks up her phone and it's her friend on the other end yelling, Where are you? The plane crashed. Samira made it home just in time to faint. Everyone aboard MH17, passengers and crew members alike, instantly lost their lives. To this day, Samira grapples with the what-ifs and the astronomical odds how McGill knew something was wrong, asking her questions about death and what would happen if the plane would crash, wondering what would have happened if she had paid closer attention to what McGill was feeling. So the question just happens to be, did McGill, someone who has flown before, just have last-minute jitters that came out of nowhere? Did he have some kind of premonition? Or was this just a bizarre coincidence? Would you, could you on a train? On September 28th, 2016, at around 6:17 p.m. Eastern Time in New York. While many people were home watching WKTV News, an emergency alert broadcast populated across their screen. Now, people who were watching this hazardous materials warning with that very strange riddle at the end, would you, could you on a train, had absolutely no idea what that meant. They were left absolutely stumped, but they kept watching WKTV like normal. Later that same day, WKTV issued an apology stating that it was only a technical error that broadcasted this alert. This alert that was supposed to stay into effect ending the very next day, September 29th, 2016, at around 2:16 a.m. Eastern Time. Now again, nobody really gave this alert much thought. They were given an apology and that was that. Until the very next day is when things would take an even stranger turn. On September 29th, a Pascack Valley Line train number 1614 left the Spring Valley station in Spring Valley, New York at around 7:23 a.m. Eastern Time, bound for Hoboken, New Jersey. Everything for the train had been running as normal until it entered the Hoboken terminal around 8:45 a.m. The train went over the bumper block and through the rail concourse, coming to rest at the wall right before the station's waiting area. The train had unfortunately crashed. One witness reported that the train never slowed down as it entered the station, which is located at the end of the line. The train was not equipped with an automatic brake system, which is used if the engineer does not slow the train down in time. The train crash resulted in one person losing their life and 114 other people injured. The one person that lost her life, Fabiola Bitar de Kroon, she was not on the train at the time of the crash. She was actually standing on the platform when she lost her life to falling debris. Those watching WKTV News in New York just hours prior to this train crash were less confused as to why they were given this riddle of this train, and then hours later, a train leaving New York for New Jersey just happens to crash. Although he was injured, the train engineer cooperated with the investigation, and both the engineer and the train conductor were interviewed by investigators. The engineer lacked any memory of the accident itself. According to federal investigators, the engineer felt well rested and was unaware of any mechanical problems in the moments before the accident. Interestingly enough, the black boxes could not be recovered when it came to the crash. When it came to the very mysterious broadcast that seemed to foreshadow the disaster, on October 4th, 2016, FEMA claimed responsibility. At the time, fact-checking website Snopes had been conducting their own independent investigation when it came to the broadcast. FEMA told Snopes that they were conducting cross-nations tests for the Emergency Alert Systems Test and Development Message using lines from various Dr. Seuss books as placeholder messages. When WKTV's Emergency Alert Systems device mistakenly relayed to the public the messages it received in its testing environment, the chosen verse from Green Eggs and Ham and its proximity to Hoboken was a pure coincidence, and FEMA had no culpability in the train crash. So then, what caused the accident? On February 6, 2018, the NTSB released their probable cause of the accident the NTSB determined that the engineer's failure to stop was caused by fatigue due to undiagnosed sleep apnea. This didn't fly with many people who are looking into this further that did not buy that this was just a mere coincidence, because conductors, engineers, and those who are in control of the train are regularly tested for sleep apnea. Similar incidents of train derailments happened in 2011 and 2013, and the causes behind those derailments were attributed to sleep apnea. That would be the final determination: sleep apnea and a pure coincidence. The bizarre coincidence between Chris Benoit and Wikipedia. Christopher Michael Benoit was a wrestling powerhouse who had a 22-year career in wrestling spanning over multiple organizations, which include the WWE, the WCW, the ECW, among other organizations. On June 22, 2007, investigators determined that over the course of 3 days at their residence, Chris had taken the life of his wife Nancy. Then the very next day, he had taken the life of his 7-year-old son. Then finally, on June 24, 2007, Chris had ended himself. Subsequent research undertaken by the Sports Legacy Institute, now the Concussion Legacy Foundation, suggested that depression and CTE, a condition of brain damage from concussions that Benoit had sustained during his pro wrestling career, were likely contributing factors to the crimes. What looked like a clear-cut case of somebody destroying their family then taking themselves out was anything but. Now, I can go on and on about the many bizarre things surrounding this case and how many people believe that Chris Benoit was framed, but I am here to talk about coincidences and a very bizarre coincidence that happened just prior to what had occurred on June 22, 2007. You see, before news had broken out about Chris Benoit and his family passing away, 14 hours before police entered the Benoit home, anonymous edits on the Wikipedia article for Chris Benoit were added about the passing of his wife Nancy Benoit. So essentially, Nancy Benoit's passing was announced before police even made the discovery. An anonymous edit from IP address 69.120.111.23 using the internet service provider Optimum Online was made at 4:01 UTC on Chris Benoit's Wikipedia article. The edited paragraph stated about an earlier fight where Chris Benoit was replaced due to personal issues, the anonymous editor added, stemming from the passing of his wife Nancy. The edit was reversed just under 1 hour later with the comment, "Need a reliable source." Saying that his wife passed away is a pretty big statement. You need to back it up with something. Strangely enough, just 1 hour later after the first edit revision, another anonymous edit by another IP address 125.63.148.173 using unwiredaustralia.com.au, a wireless internet service provider, was made adding about the aforementioned personal issues. That edit had stated, which according to several pro wrestling websites is attributed to the passing of Benoit's wife Nancy. That edit was reverted just under 20 minutes later with the comment saying several pro wrestling websites is still not reliable information. So just hours before police discovered Chris Benoit and his family, hours before news broke out about Chris Benoit and his family, there was a tussle on Wikipedia. These random IP addresses saying that Nancy Benoit passed away, Chris Benoit was the reason. Wikipedia would come back and say that this is fake news. There is no reliable source saying so. Further investigations were conducted on the IP addresses. Investigations had shown that the IP address used to make the very first edit was located in Connecticut, but the IP address was not linked to any computers or servers used by the WWE. But here's what's strange. According to Carrie Bass, volunteer coordinator for the Wikimedia Foundation, the IP address actually matches a location in Stamford, Connecticut, where the WWE headquarters is located. Bass also informed the local authorities in Atlanta about the unusual edits, but it is not known if the edits were ever investigated by the police. The second edit was made by a computer in Australia from a wireless network. Bass had claimed it didn't become apparent until someone put the pieces together and realized that the comment was made by someone who apparently knew what had taken place inside the Benoit home. Fayette County Sheriff Deputy Lieutenant Tommy Pope stated that police found the family at about 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday when the WWE called police and asked them to do a welfare check after employees of WWE received calls and text messages from Chris Benoit. Early Sunday, Benoit sent repeated text messages that read, "My physical address is 130 Green Meadow Lane, Fayetteville, Georgia, 30215. Another text message reportedly said, "The dogs are in the enclosed pool area, garage side door is open." The messages were sent around 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Earlier, on Saturday afternoon, Chris Benoit placed a series of calls that explained why he missed his flight to Houston. The stories he told were mostly about his wife and son being sick with food poisoning and vomiting, although in one call he said that he and Nancy were at the hospital to be with Daniel, who was hospitalized. Though throughout that call, Chris insisted that he would attend the live WWE event in Houston, when he missed that live event on Sunday and the WWE could not get a hold of him, the WWE contacted the authorities. This is when the police conducted that welfare check and found the Benoit family. The Wikinews investigation was unable to conclude whether the anonymous editors had any inside information about the passing of Nancy Benoit. Wikipedia had also stated that this is not the first time Benoit's article had been edited to show false or unsourced information, as the article's edit history indicates a long history of promotional spam and vandalism. Around the time of the edits, the article contained a hidden warning to editors of the section mentioned, warning against adding rumors and speculations. For the time being, Benoit's article had been protected in an attempt to stop the addition of fraudulent information. The final determination as to what happened with Chris Benoit's Wikipedia page and Nancy Benoit was just that it was a good guess and a coincidence. The bizarre coincidences of the Elisa Lams. Now, I do believe by now everybody is familiar with the very bizarre case of Elisa Lam. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. For one, like I said, almost everybody is familiar with this case. And for two, like with Chris Benoit, this could turn into a very lengthy video. So I'm not going to talk about all the theories that surrounds this very bizarre case or her background. I'm just going to target the very strange coincidence. For a quick synopsis, on February 19, 2013, the body of Canadian tourist Elisa Lam was recovered from a large cistern atop the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, where she had been a guest. She was last seen alive on January 31st and was reported missing by her parents on February 8th. She was discovered by a hotel maintenance worker investigating complaints of flooding and low water pressure. Here's the thing, people had also stated that the water had an unusual taste, so people were also drinking this water. The tank where she was found was providing water to guest rooms, a kitchen, and a coffee shop. So again, it's very important to understand that people were drinking the water. This video footage had released which had shown Elisa Lam in great distress. Once this video footage had released, multiple theories had branched out, but the ultimate determination was that she had a mental break. Why it's important to remember that people cooked, bathed, and drank the water Elisa Lam was found in happens to be that a couple days after Elisa Lam was found, a very bad outbreak of tuberculosis had overtaken Skid Row right next to the Cecil Hotel. Matter of fact, very bad would not even begin to describe the outbreak. As reported by health workers at the time, they had identified about 4,650 people who were probably exposed to a persistent outbreak of the contagious disease on downtown Los Angeles' Skid Row. Over the course of 5 years, that outbreak continued to occur and remained a challenging issue, making it one of the worst outbreaks that had occurred in American history. Well, where does Elisa Lam fall into all this? To test people for TB, a test of course has to be administered. A test was administered, and the name of this test just happened to be Lam Elisa. That's right, the name of this TB test just happens to be coincidentally Elisa Lam's name in reverse. There were people that stated that this was too much of a coincidence, and this confirms that something nefarious had taken place with Elisa Lam. Elisa Lam is found in a water tank in a hotel that's right next to Skid Row, where people are getting sick with TB, and in order to test these people, they are given a test called, well, Elisa Lam. Except it's Lam Elisa. people had questioned if Elisa Lam had TB when she was found in the water tank. Now, remember that video footage where it appears that Elisa Lam is in great distress? As I stated, many people had attributed that to her having a mental break. What had come out about Elisa Lam is that she had a history of mental illness. But it should also be very important to note that one of the side effects of TB just happens to be delirium, insanity. People affected by TB have a higher risk of mental health conditions, which can negatively impact TB treatment outcomes, health-related quality of life, and other health and social outcomes. In fact, mental health conditions are one of the top impairments suffered by people with TB. Now, the thing is, investigators came out and stated that Elisa Lam was not affected with TB. That all rumors between Elisa Lam and TB was just that. It was just rumors. That the bizarre coincidence when it comes to the name of the test being named after Elisa Lam was just that. It was just a bizarre coincidence. They also want people to know that the Lam-Elisa test was created well before Elisa Lam was born. The test was created in 1971. Elisa Lam was born April 30th, 1991. So the final outcome is that Elisa Lam had bipolar disorder and depression. She took her own self out, and the test TB was just, again, a very bizarre coincidence. Which of these three strange stories had the most bizarre coincidence? Please do comment in the comment section below. In any case, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, please subscribe. If you're already subscribed, please like, as any engagement does help the channel grow. Once again, thank you so much for your support.